Hello there, yes it is I, the conspicuous Moo, with my final video of the year that was. Today I'd like to look at elements of Shadowlands so far, offer some tepid opinions and suggest some improvements. Now this is going to be more of a podcasty type one, but I'll put some pretty pictures up for you all the same. But that said, it does sound like a good time to get cracking, and what better place than the Maw. Now, while it's not the worst example of a timeless-style derivative that WoW has to offer, it's still pretty bleak in terms of its content and replayability. A slightly darker broken shore, with the fell lines being replaced by anima rivers, the Maw is noticeably more pants than other zones in the game. It's absolutely fine to embrace the bleak nature of the place, but it doesn't need to extend to the gameplay as well. It's also quite a bold strategy to put what is traditionally a filler zone while you invent a raid, and plonk it in right at the start. To be honest, the Maw feels like they just ran out of time. The interns had just finished placing the bosses and the dailies, and they're about to get creative with the zone when all of a sudden there was launch, and we were left with a deeply repetitive and uninteresting experience that gives you little, if any, feeling of progression, which is so vital for MMOs. Story-wise, it does continue to be a bit of a dead end unless you count the woo new zone moment once Venari detests you a little less. Given the potentially fascinating clientele in the Maw, including a former Lich King no less, I would have expected more story and character development in this zone than probably in any other, given the possibilities. Instead, it's 3 dailies, a weekly, and the odd hunt, which possibly but probably doesn't work according to your server. And, seriously, the last 3 hunts have bugged out on me altogether. That's really not good enough, and if I were Blizzard, I would be putting more into this zone before we're all exalted with Venari, have all of her toys, and see no further point in visiting. Even if you skipped a few days, because it's like leg day at the gym and you can't be bothered, you're likely at least cordial with the woman, and some are already appreciated by her. So, suggestions? Make it more about taking back the Maw and denying the jailer access to less and less, than just about going in and feeling like you're not making a dent. Maybe some prisoners have broken out of Torghast and have formed a resistance. Maybe Venari, amongst all of her other gadgets, has a couple for concealing additional quest and story hubs. Maybe we can help to siphon Anima away from the jailer and weaken his control over the zone. At this point, even my crappy suggestions are significant upgrades to the Maw in its current state, and that cannot be a good thing. Mythic Plus. There's always going to be some fine balancing when it comes to repeatable content with desirable upgrades in it. However, nothing quite beats the feeling of receiving 35 anima after getting annihilated in an ill-fated Halls of Ascension pug. Mythic Plus at the moment needs some help, I feel. The rewards don't feel like they match the time investment. Do we, for example, need a bigger chunk of anima, something closer to 250, which the Elite World Quests give? Or the ability to upgrade the gear of your choice to a max of 10 eye levels per piece? Or just a bump up in the eye level rewards currently on offer? Clearly Blizzard feel that previous versions of Mythic Plus were too generous, so they've pared it back and given us the Vault for additional choices. And, the Vault is great, don't get me wrong. But a more immediate and satisfying reward is needed at the end of a run that just isn't there at the moment. Can you really be asked to run another one when you've gotten 3 runs of nothing? A lot of people can't. And then there's the affixes. It's fair to say that Storming and Spiteful haven't been openly welcomed to the game thus far. The former got nerfed rather quickly, and the latter is just a nightmare for melee. In fact, both of them are guaranteed to make your Mythic miserable at close quarters, and probably need reworking a little. While it's fine to have the affixes there, making them an automatic weekly skip for melee-heavy groups, and the declines that those melees will also experience, indicates that, while the intention is good, the execution is still somewhat lacking. Someone on Twitter today also pointed out that it's a lot easier to acquire higher level gear through PvP than through clearing a Mythic 15+. Assuming the skill levels for both of those activities are even, that's more than a little unfair on those of us who are, let's say, not very good at the PvPs. I'd also add that while the dungeons for the most part are excellent, they do feel a little too tightly tuned, and as a result are more punishing of mistakes than is really necessary. This is reflected in a series of nerfs and outright removal of mobs that has taken place in the last couple of weeks, and I hope that Blizzard continue to monitor feedback on this. But overall, Mythic Plus really does need some reward buffs. Either high-level gear, I mean not by much, but parity with the other sources of gear is not really too much to ask for, more anima, or the option to upgrade existing gear incrementally so people feel like it's worth their time. Blizzard has the participation numbers. My impression is that they're probably lower than they expected. Torghast. The tower has lost a lot of its initial vigour in the post-nerf age, but it's still a commendable piece of content from Blizzard. While it's still not particularly challenging for the most part, it is still possible to get killed through a combination of inattention, slow reactions, unwillingness/inability to CC, and good old YOLO. Of course, the randomosity of the floors and encounters will maintain player attention for longer, but whatever shape it takes, it's ultimately the same mobs with the same mechanics and a lot of fragile pottery scattered about. As long as you're sentient, you should be able to clear it. The bigger problems with Torghast are, as ever, balance. It's simply not possible to balance such a place with a wide variety of crazy anima powers and with every single spec in mind. However, there might need to be a few more surgical changes so that the outliers are brought in. Running Torghast solo is, anecdotally at least, a lot easier for tanks and healers than it is for our fellow damage dealers, although I'm not sure, as an aside, that I'd want to be a holy priest in there. But some of the floor and end bosses are wildly tilted towards either ridiculously trivial or near impossible. The aforementioned anima powers can also be a little bit too silly. For example, all monks really need to nuke the place are as many stacks of corrosive dosage as they can get. Spamming Vivify is an unusual and unsatisfying path to victory, but it does top the meters. So something like that probably needs snipping back a bit. I'm also a little worried about the future. What happens when we have the legendaries we want at rank 4? Does Torghast just cease to be relevant? There's certainly a danger of that right now, as people are starting to max out the few legendary powers that benefit them. Like its bedfellow the Maw, without serious work it's in danger of becoming useless past the first patch of the expansion. Now, perhaps the twisting corridors, the emancipation of our leaders and revenge-fueled mania to burn down the jailer's bachelor pad from the inside out will all help to maintain its relevance. Covenants. I think Covenants have largely been done very well. However, I do stand by my earlier conviction that creating Covenant-specific abilities for each class was a monumental waste of development time and energy that really should have been put into class design instead. And no, I don't consider bringing back old abilities to fill up our action bars to bursting as class design. It does appear, however, that for many classes, that's exactly what Blizzard thinks it is. As for the mission table, look, it's fine. I've never liked the things, but it's not as if it takes up much of my time. Should a AAA gaming company be making mobile trash like this and putting it into Shadowlands? No, they shouldn't. Is it cheap and simple to do? Yes, and that's why they do it. I'd happily skip it altogether, but it is spitting out mounts and soul ash and other valuable things, so I guess there you go. The campaign, for Night Fae at least, has been excellent so far. It's really great to see Blizzard putting effort into storytelling again, and they've done a good job with the Wild Hunt. My one concern is that players from other Covenants are not experiencing this as well, which is a pity. For those of us that don't ult, it means that a lot of lore and character and meaningful Shadowlands events are either unavailable, or only available once you go through the Covenant switching malarkey several times. And that doesn't really seem like a good idea. My suggestion would be to have those campaigns available to players not of that Covenant once they hit Exalted with that faction. They can be started in the Enclave and Oribus, and Draka can be like, well, despite your poor taste in company, you have come through for a small walker. If you wish to be informed of our own efforts, then come with me. Or something like that. I mean, does anyone outside of the Night Fae actually know the setup to the other side through their campaign? I doubt it. I should put a side mention out here for soulbinds as well. They still lack the flexibility required of the modern WoW player. I only have one character. I use Nia for tanking, Dreamwave for DPS, oh but wait, I need Mythic Plus conduits here, and then the AoE conduits there. Guess I'll have to switch them out. I mean, thank goodness I don't want to heal, or do PvP, either as damage or healing, because that would just make things worse. The charger system is just terrible. Arbitrary restrictions put in place to limit player agency are never a good idea. Please scrap it. Story. Now, what I consider to be supremely important for Shadowlands, the continuation and development of the story. While they've made an excellent start in this expansion, they also managed this in BFA before we all descended beneath the waves and Zoth and what the hell just happened. It's worth noting that half of the characters on the main loading screen for Shadowlands are now dead, so the ladies had better be watching their backs. The key thing here is momentum and keeping the threads of the different covenants nice and taut. There are few things more frustrating than having a whole host of unresolved plot lines that have been set up and then discarded. Watchers of the recent Star Wars trilogy can probably attest to this. For example, I want them to address what's going to happen to the 2 destroyed houses of Maldraxxus. Will they rebuild? Is the Runecarver bloke actually the Primus with a silly hat on? Who is going to leave the constructs now? Are they going to cooperate with the other houses? Now that Denathrius is dead, is the Accuser or Prince Renathal going to take charge? Are they going to play by the Shadowlands rules, or will they just be different sides of the same Denathriel coin? Where's Garrosh? Has he been released, or at the very least is he getting better treatment? What will they do with the Ember Ward? Should they reclaim it, shade it, fight back against the Light? And then of course, yes, there's the Light. How's Turalyon doing? Should we trust him? Is he creating his own base of power and undermining the Alliance from within? How good are the Naru really? Can Valen help us? And what about those dodgy traders in Oribos? If you listen to their chat, they're clearly up to something. Were they responsible for the Arbiter's accident? What is the purpose, and is it noble? I'm thinking not. Are there factions within this lot scrapping with each other? Venari is an obvious example of someone on the outer. They remind me of the Ethereals. Are they just constructs housing ethereal souls? Do they have their own designs upon the anima of Shadowlands? Do I ask too many questions, and does my bum look big in this transmog? So, basically, I'm interested in the story. So keep going, Blizzard, you've made a cracking start. Now, to round off, let's celebrate the great things in Shadowlands. The wonderful graphical and musical efforts of the team, as always, the much better layout of most of the zones, the voice acting, the characters, the dungeons for the most part, and the raid, which has been excellent. PvP vendors have come back, the calling system, the anima conductors, the quite superbly detailed covenants, the questing experience. They really have ticked a lot of the right boxes for an expansion, and it has been an excellent beginning. Sure, there are things that I could well do without. The world quests are as dull as ever. Server performance, particularly on Oceanic, has been really quite poor and has nothing to do with the players and everything to do with Blizzard's local server infrastructure and sharding technologies. Some bugs do persist, both in classes and outside in the world, but by and large you have to take your hats off to them. They've done good this time. That doesn't mean, of course, that we should let them off the hook from now on. If we look away for too long, we'll be doing Bejeweled again before we realise it. Thanks for letting me drone on today, and well done for getting this far. Your reward is a good night's sleep after the New Year festivities. Now, do have yourselves an excellent end of 2020, and I will be back on the other side with Mozala and an updated wishlist for Brewmasters as we travel towards the first major content patch. But until then, I am the Conspicuous Moo, and a very happy 2021 to you.